Paul Sweeney, with commendable...
Mr. Speaker, and I'll do my best to keep it brief, although it is a subject very close to my heart. I've grown up around the shipbuilding industry my entire life, and not only have I grown up around it, but I also had the privilege of working in the shipbuilding industry as a new graduate in 2010, 2011 through to 2016. And through that time, I've learned the bitter lessons of failed and deeply flawed Ministry of Defence procurement practices. Whether it was my own dad having to go and travel around the country through the 1990s following shipbuilding orders around the country as Type 23 frigate orders were drip-fed and were usually in a race to the bottom between Yarrow shipbuilders and Swan Hunters to build them. That was a recipe for disinvestment and unemployment, and that is the harsh lessons that were learned, and that's why the Labour government turned away from that policy after 1997 and promoted a defence industrial strategy, which was well regarded on all sides of the House, and then was followed up by a terms of business agreement that would have guaranteed a stable pipeline of work with one ship build every 12 months and a 6-year design cycle for complex warships. That was again extinguished in 2014 by the Minister of Defence in pursuit of an utterly wrong-headed policy when it comes to shipbuilding procurement. Let me make it clear, the capacity to award this contract to a British shipyard is entirely at the discretion of the Ministry of Defence under the terms of Article 346 of the European functioning rules. So it's completely at their discretion to do so, and indeed it's common practice to have done it. Indeed, France, Germany, Italy, Spain and the United States do it, and indeed most recently Canada has pursued a similar policy with its national shipbuilding strategy where big ship construction will be focused in Vancouver and complex warship construction will be focused in Halifax, with a new purpose-built frigate factory built in Halifax. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Except they've actually achieved it and we haven't. So what I would say also is that Govan Shipyard, which is now the mainstay of British shipbuilding capacity, the largest steelwork capacity which my friend from Glasgow, Glasgow South West represents, and I had the privilege of working in for several years, is now the largest steelwork capacity shipyard in the UK by a considerable margin, and is also the only shipyard capable of building complex warships in the United Kingdom to date. I would say that that shipyard is only existing today because it was saved in 1999 by a UK Labour government who made clear that it would save it by providing a Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship, the Wave class, to that shipyard, and then the Bay class Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship to that shipyard, thus enabling it to be match fit to build the Type 45 destroyers, the aircraft carriers, and subsequently, as we see now, the River class ships and the new Type 26 frigates. So the only reason that yard exists today is because the government took a conscious decision to ensure capacity was maintained at those shipyards. And we see a further new crunch point emerging today. Current Royal Navy shipbuilding plan, capacity plan for 2020 to 2040 shows a large UK ship construction gap, and that's primarily focused on Rosyth. Rosyth will have a 15-year gap in work between the completion of the HMS Prince of Wales and the first refit of the Queen Elizabeth, or indeed the build for the new future amphibious capability, because it is the only facility in the UK currently capable of building large beam vessels of wider than 20 metres, and the new FSS vessels are 29.5 metres, and the new future amphibious vessels will be wider than 20 metres. So in order to ensure that the pipeline of capability is maintained in the UK, we must build the FSS in the UK in order to ensure that we have our future amphibious capability, sovereign capability. As the Minister conceded tonight that the amphibious capabilities are regarded as sovereign shipbuilding capabilities. You must secure that pipeline of work in order to enable future amphibious vessel construction. Let us be clear about the economic benefits too, which were somewhat dusted over by the Minister. I think he was rather, let's just say, flimsy in his analysis. A return of 36p in the pound for naval shipbuilding work according to RUSI, and £285 million of that will return to the Exchequer, but that is just a quarter of the overall industrial and economic benefit to the UK. A recent IPPR report, taking into account welfare savings and greater GDP growth, found that the return from naval shipbuilding activity in the UK was 40% to the Treasury. That must be taken into account when considering the practical award of these contracts in public procurement. 70% of shipbuilding contracts are derived from the supply chain, and in 2015 that was worth £2.8 billion. That is a huge industrial benefit to the UK. Overseas shipyards like Daewoo in South Korea aren't bidding out of altruism. They're aggressively pursuing state-backed support efforts to pump prime their own industrial base. In the case of DSME in South Korea, they've invested $6 billion in 2017. And Sir John Parker's own report, which the Minister has lauded, said overseas build brings its own challenges, including potential denial of opportunities for the UK supply chain, higher costs of overseas supervision, and potential foreign exchange risk, which we already saw in the most recent RFA build in Korea, nor does the production of ships overseas make direct prosperity contribution to the UK that an onshore build would achieve. So I would urge the Minister of Defence, if it's standing by its convictions and its ideological position on this, it should demonstrate the economic and social impact of domestic production versus offshore production, instead of the flimsy assertions we've seen made by the government side today, which have been utterly at odds with the truth. And also, if they're defining a Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship as not a complex warship or fitted with armaments, I would ask, well, why do you class the River class Batch 2 as basically complex warships as well? Because I have to say, the proposed FSS ships have far more armaments contained within them than the River class patrol ships do. So I would ask you, yes, and so are the patrol ships. So why are you defining them as sovereign build but not the FSS? Your logic does not stack up, I'm afraid. It is based on a flawed analysis. So what I would say in conclusion is we must have a virtuous cycle of investment, not a vicious cycle of disinvestment. The harsh lessons of the 1990s were learned. Stop throwing away 20 years of coherent and proper defence procurement planning in this ridiculous pursuit of an ideological vanity that is utterly going to fail our shipbuilding industry.